Hi, I'm Stuart Little, and welcome to littlephotoshop.com. In this special screencast, I'm going to show you 6 essential techniques for improving your images. I'm actually writing an article for Photoshop Creative at the moment that are going to include these images, and it's a 6-page article in total. So I thought, as well as actually writing the article, showing the techniques in written format, we would also do some video tutorials for them. So this is what we're doing. So to get started, without further ado, let's work on the first technique. The first technique is a retouching technique. It's very simple, but extremely important. So you're going to create a new layer. I'm just going to rename that layer, as I tend to do, retouch. And that way you know what it is, because we're going to try and work as non-destructively as possible. Now, there isn't a huge amount to retouch here. There's an awful lot of busy things going on in this image, but there's a few things that are kind of bothering me. We've got an outlet pipe or stream that's basically gone underground at the edge here, which is a little bit distracting. There's a houseboat, but we'll leave that alone. And there's also some little bits of sort of hot spots of colour, as I tend to call them, and we need to maybe tidy up the embankment a little bit. So not a huge amount of retouching, but some little bits and pieces. So we're going to start off with our healing brush, and we'll see how we got on with that. We may possibly go to the clone stamp tool. Now when you're working with your brush, you want to basically select sampled and also sample all layers. Current and below would work as well, but all layers is a little bit better just in case we want to do more retouching later on and we have more layers. So zooming in, then I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key to sample the area, and then I'm just going to start to just blend in the embankment and just remove all of the water area here, and just generally kind of tidy it up, and we'll just add a little bit of rock area and things like that in there. The good thing is it's so small in the image generally, it's a little bit distracting, but it's small in the image that, you know, doing that little bit of tidying up there just really won't be noticed. So that's the first bit done, and if I zoom in a little bit further, you can see if I go to before and after, it's so hidden that I can't even find it. There we go. So there's before and after. We can then move on to, for example, this seagull. And this is the kind of thing you could leave in, but because it's not flying up in the sky and it's cutting across the sort of line of the river itself, I'm just basically going to get rid of it, and we're just going to take it out. And then we can move on to some other little birdie elements and things like that. So I'm just going to tidy up and make sure the river is a little bit cleaner. Now while I continue to do this, you can have a go with your own images, and we will meet up again for technique number 2, and I'll show you what I've done with this. Hey, welcome back. Okay, whilst you've been away, in the last few minutes I have retouched a little bit more, and if I just click on my visibility, I've also renamed the layer a little bit more as well. I put number 1 for technique number 1, just so you know where we stand. There's before and there's after. So just to kind of identify the little bits and pieces that I have tidied up, I have removed the person who's just underneath the tree here, tidied up the embankment a little bit, just tidied up the edge of the riverbank and the sort of sandbar, stones and things like that. We removed a few of the seagulls down here and a few of the spots in the river and things like that, because the river's quite low, and just generally just tidied up the seagulls in underneath the bridge which are flying, which if I zoom in you will see there and there. They are now vanished away, and obviously our water outlet, our little underground stream or sewage pipe, whatever it is, along this side of the riverbank. Now when you're doing retouching to the likes of a landscape here, I tend to look for things that distract from the overall appearance of the image. Now obviously, you know, there's lots of detail going on in the image, and you don't want to remove things like boats and that, because you're removing the character and the appearance of the image. But, you know, you can, you know, just mellow out different bits and pieces. I wouldn't go as far as to, you know, completely repair the embankment up here, but in the likes of moving logs and that, because these things you would expect to see alongside a riverbank, and you know, the likes of, you know, the sort of brown here is actually probably a combination of some of the leaves coming off the tree. So if you take that all away, you're taking away the character of the actual picture itself. So that's that part done. Technique number 2 is going to be the adjustment of density. So we're going to do a curves adjustment layer. What I'm trying to do here is to work as non-destructively as possible. Another thing to keep in mind, if you're working on a raw image, I happen to be working on a PSD, but if you're working on a raw image, that you can do this as well. So, you know, the retouch tool in either Bridge or Lightroom can basically do exactly the same thing that I've done here, but obviously non-destructively. So we're going to go for a curves adjustment layer, and we shall just call this number 2 curves, because it's technique number 2, and I'll just add at the end density, because that's what you're doing, you're adjusting the density of the image. So what we want to do is we want to just play with the curves, maybe brighten things up a little bit so we can see a little bit more detail in these darker parts of the image. And this is where, you know, the retouching has to kind of stand up to scrutiny, because you need to obviously just see exactly where you've been retouching. If you lighten things up afterwards and you can actually see the retouching, then you might need to go in and sort of, you know, just fine tune it a little bit. So that's why we don't do the density before, we do it afterwards. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my curves and I'm just basically increasing along this line here so that we're brightening up and we'll get a little bit more detail in. But we also, in the same stage, want to make sure that we lock off the shadow detail. So I'm putting another point down here, and then we can play just with the sky and just maybe deepen the sky but still have, you know, a reasonable amount of brightness going on as well. So it's like a 3-point curve effectively, and you just got to kind of decide where you want to sit things. It's personal taste, but you want to make sure that in the darker parts of the image there are enough detail. I'm just going to take it down a little bit without introducing too much noise, but we can see what's going on in here, which is fine. And the areas where we want it to be a little bit darker to have separation with the building, that's fine as well. And we've got plenty of detail in the sky, and in the brighter parts of the image we're not blowing completely to white because it's not appropriate with this image. So just a little minor S-curve effectively. It's actually just, you know, not quite tailing off to an S-curve, but nearly there. So we're kind of working to the mid-tone area, highlights, and then the shadows. And that's all you really need to do for the density aspect of things. Okay, moving on to our third technique. We need to add a colour mood to the image. At the moment this image is quite cool, and yes, we could go in and do colour balance and things like that, but generally speaking it's pretty correct in terms of the colour. You know, the grass is green, the trees are a browny colour, and the roofs are a sort of green, obviously from the copper that's been used to line them or whatever. And you know, the sky's blue. So, you know, it's not bad colour wise, but we want to inject some colour for a little bit of mood. And to do this, what I'm going to do is make a decision. I didn't take this image, it's provided to me by the editor of the magazine, Rosie Tanner, and it's a stock shot effectively. So this could either have been done first thing in the morning, or judging by the light, you know, last thing at night. And I'm going to guess it's probably leaning more towards an evening shot than a morning shot, because most people don't like to get up early in the morning. So that's just a bit of an educated guess. So we want to put some colour mood into it. And to do that, we're going to use another adjustment layer. Now, you do have this option of doing a photo filter, which with the warming photo filters can be quite interesting, but I like to sometimes go up to solid colour. It gives you a similar effect, but it allows you to fine tune things. Now we're going to take our colour range into the warmer end of things, into the oranges, but we're not going to go for orange. So we're looking for a hue of 45. We're then going to go down to the brown end of things. In fact, I might just dip it down to 40. In fact, maybe even high as 50. And just find a level that I'm quite happy with. So I think we'll go for 50. And then we're just going to play with a brown that we quite like. Now this is just experience that's telling me this. So if you want to get the same kind of brown, you could type in the hexadecimal box 3A3102, and that will give you the same settings. Or copy the RGB settings here. Click OK. Now to make these all work, we then need to change the blend mode. And to do that, we're going to use soft light. And then you can see the effect that's actually going on. Now we have deepened the density of the image, but we then need to adjust the opacity just to get some detail back. And from there, if you're not quite happy with how dark things have got, double click in your colour and then just slide it up slightly until it gets a bit lighter, but it is still obviously warmer. So we're kind of heading towards the oranges but not quite there yet. And at the moment I'm at 554804 for our warmth. And click OK. And as you can see, if I switch off the visibility of our colour fill 1 layer, there's before and there's after. So I'm injecting a warmth to the image and making a decision about the actual colour effectively. So we shall call this technique number 3, colour mood. That's probably the best way to describe it, because that's what you're doing. You're sort of injecting colour as a mood. Now, because we've applied this all the way over the whole image, I want to get some of the blues back in the sky. And because this is an adjustment layer, it automatically comes with a layer mask. We're then going to go to the gradient tool, and then from there we're just going to work with a normal linear gradient. Black and white is our foreground colour, and clicking on our layer mask, we should then, holding in our shift key, be able to drag a gradient and get some of the blue back in the sky. So it's getting a balance between setting mood and also getting some blue back into the sky, just to, enliven the image up a little bit. And remember, we can just fine tune the opacity, so I'm just going to bring it up to 65%, and then you can see before and after. And if I zoom, if I were at full tilt just now, if I hold down my Alt key and click on the background, there's before at the beginning, there's our retouch layer, there's our curves and density, and there's our mood layer, with a little bit of a gradient mask added in just to get some blue back into the sky.